I think the honest and easy question is to ask yourself, is the software that I'm using, am I working with it or am I working around it?
Welcome to the Treat Your Business podcast, the show for clinic owners who want real, honest advice and tried and tested ways of doing things. I'm Katie Bell, and this is the new era of bigger insights and bolder conversations to help you grow a clinic and a life you love. Let's dive in.
Hi, Tom. Welcome to the Treat Your Business podcast.
Thanks very much for having me, Katie.
Tom, nobody's heard your voice before on this podcast. We've heard Ben's many times. Tom, tell everybody who you are and why you're here today.
Yeah, so I am part of the Jane UK team, and my role is to look after product for the UK, which means I'm all about listening to what customers in the UK need and then trying to get that action into the product. And my background is very much just that in healthcare technology for a good 12 years or so now.
Wow. Okay, so we can class you as an expert. We've got lots to talk about today, but one of the things that I think we should dive into is we hear this time and time again when we're working with clinic owners and we're chatting to them at conferences or events or when we're coaching, and that is that they might have a piece of software or a system that they've had in their clinic for a long time and they know they need to move, but the thought of moving to one that is going to work better for them, on paper, it's more cost effective. On paper, it's going to save them more time. All of that, we can see all the pros, but they just find it's such a massive thing for them to move from an existing piece of software. Why do you think that is, Tom?
I think this speaks to how important software has become for clinics. And I think it's such a crucial part of the day-to-day that it's not a luxury and a nice to have anymore. I think that thought then of moving is so fundamental. And look, a lot of clinics are really busy. And then it's that, okay, how do I make the time? How do I realize I know there's benefits, but they're too far away?
Yeah.
How do I realize that? And I think that's a lot of what we see at Jane is helping people through that initial stage. And I think it would be remiss of me to say, oh, it's dead easy after a day. No, it's a couple of weeks and then maybe even a month or so before things start to feel easier for clinics. So I definitely empathize. And I think it is a big thing, in changing software shouldn't be done on a whim, and it requires a sort of project level thinking.
And that's interesting, isn't it? Because I think sometimes, and I say this with a lot of respect, but I know the audience well, is that we do things on a whim, Tom, because we are visionaries, we're clinic owners that haven't got any time, but we might go to an exhibition or we might just make a very quick decision and think, I'm just going to do it. And what we see is this kind of no higher level strategic thinking perhaps happened, in that where does this fit into the timescale of everything else that's going on in the business? New starters, people leaving, holidays, seasonal stuff. I remember when we moved years ago now to Jane, it was like, okay, I really needed to project manage this whole thing. And it was like, I was hardly involved in it, which was great. My team were, but it requires that kind of planning, doesn't it? Reverse engineering where you want to be, when, and coming back from that to give yourself the best opportunity for the software to work really well for you. I don't know about you, Tom, but do you have users that you connect with and you help that are just not using it in the most sort of optimal way, so it's doing 5% of the work?
Yeah, I think so. And that normally comes from a couple of places, is that it feels easier to just move the scheduling, say, and not the notes. And that then again, you end up with paper notes and an online schedule, and there's a bunch of friction. And that's always a real shame for us when we see that, because although it definitely feels harder up front, if you can get more of your workflow onto the system, like whatever you're choosing, I think that's a better way to give it a fairer test.
Yeah.
I think also something you said there about that you need to project management end to end. It's really is thinking about how much support are you going to get from where you're going. Obviously, that is something I'm sure the listeners have heard from Ben, that we pride ourselves on our support, our data imports, and it's all free up front there to move it across. And we do have additional onboarding services as well. And I think that is a crucial thing to consider, is who's going to play what role, because although Jane in this case can do a lot. We can't do it all. We can't decide what does your clinic look like next week, next month, next year. And that's really something that's got to come from you as a clinic owner. And what Jane aims to be is a great partner in that change. But yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with a lot of what you talked about there with your own switch. To be honest, Katie, it is about that. It's a project, and it's a multi-month project to get the best value, and it should be a transformation.
And I think even now, as a Jane user, I don't even know how many years, Tom, loads of years, I'm still always asking the question with my team, how can Jane help us do this better or quicker or faster? And if we don't know, I think what's great is that your support network is incredible. So we can just pick up the phone, we can reach out, and we can have an open conversation about what are we not seeing here, or what can the system do that we still don't even know, because you're adding things to it all the time and it's forever changing and meeting the needs of UK clinic owners more and more, I think.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Obviously, yeah, we've got the UK team and always working hard to meet both the existing needs and try and think ahead to that tomorrow as well. The big thing I would say, and this comes a little bit from my background as well, is we don't expect anyone to be software designers. So I love it when a customer comes to me and says, Tom, I'm having these kinds of problems. I'm not seeing return on my ad spend, or et cetera, or I've got all these templates and how might we? And it's those kinds of sentences we think, oh, great, because then we can use our knowledge of the product to meet that need. And quite often it is a case of something already exists in the product. But it, as you said, Jane is a big company and we're always adding to the product.
Yeah.
Just being aware of those changes is a big part of my job. And we don't expect clinics to keep up with every single thing. So I'd always encourage people to come and talk to us in terms of problems. Where it can be a little more tricky is if someone has decided on a solution in their head and comes to us and it isn't quite the way we do it, but this will do it just as well. And that, again, that can be hard.
Yeah.
But that is what the team is there for, really, Katie, is to go, look, actually, this is an idea. But I would almost recommend listeners think about a quarterly or a half year kind of audit of process. It's probably one of those things that is best done little and often, but reality of a busy clinic. But that question you said of how can we improve note taking? How can we improve scheduling? How can, maybe it's picking on a focus area every few months, and how can we improve our billing flows here? Where are the biggest sort of time losses? And if I shorten that by 50%, well, that's equivalent to 2 client appointments that I've just added without having to employ another person or work an extra evening. I think that's a really good way to think about it. And the great system should always be responsive to those things. It might not be perfect, but you should be seeing the system grow with your clinic as well.
Yeah, I think that's really important. We're so desperate often when we make a decision to change that we need to know the how. And so because we don't know the how, because we're not software designers, it puts us off from making those decisions. But I think it's also thinking about, is the software that you currently have serving you and serving your clinic for where it's going, not where it is now? Because as we should hire for where we want to be in 6 and 12 months, we should also be implementing software and technology and automation and things like that for growth and for scale, not just fixing today's problem and thinking, all right, I fixed it. Everything that we should do, especially our clinic owners who listen to this, Tom, they're looking for growth. They've got team. They're in that growth phase. And so a good software has to support that journey, doesn't it? But if it doesn't right at the beginning, because you've not got every report doing everything and every kind of process set up right, that's not a bad thing. It'll just grow with you as you can optimize and I guess get better processes and structure in your clinic. So it's not to be something that's to put people off, because I think we all want to go from nothing to 100 and think that's it. It's all going to be all singing, all dancing. It'll all work perfectly from day one. It doesn't. It can't possibly, can it? It needs to, as you said, grow with you.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the honest and easy question is to ask yourself, is the software that I'm using, am I working with it or am I working around it? Now, there will always be, for any software, Jane included, there will be always moments of working around it. Now, how much of a ratio is that? And how crucial is that to your clinic? That is only a question you as a clinic owner can answer.
Yeah.
But if you find you're working around your software regularly, then it is time to make that honest investment. And that is the cost of switching, right? Is a lot of people will work around things because they know that software and they know how it works.
Yeah.
But as you rightly said, Katie, what does that look like in 6 months?
Yeah.
Are you going to be working around it more and more as you grow rooms, as you grow treatment types, as you grow staff numbers,
Yeah.
as you grow complexity in the patient base? Maybe you start to take insurance. What does that look like in 6 months? Because if you're employing people and then part of their job starts to become working around the system, where you can add so much business benefit by taking a step back and going, okay, what will actually meet our needs for where I want to be in 6 and 12 months? And then I think the investment case starts to make sense. Even if you see a couple less patients, clients for a few weeks to give yourself the project time, well, it makes sense because you've then reduced the administrative time by 50% when you get that back in 3 months easily.
Absolutely. And I think that's really important, isn't it? That so many of us see these sorts of things as a cost to the business, but they really are not. If you have a software that aligns with where your business is going, that the majority of the time you're working with it, not around it, and that you're utilizing its kind of the depth of the software and all the different features it has to automate, reduce your administrative time. And I think that's so important for clinic owners to know, isn't it, Tom, that their time is worth money. At the very least, it's worth the equivalent of what a patient would pay you to see them in that half an hour or that hour, at the very lowest. But actually, when spending an hour on optimizing something, that a feature in Jane could save you 10, 20, 50, 100 hours over the year. And that time is worth cumulatively so much more. So it's having that shift, I think, for clinic owners, as seeing that this is very much an investment.
Yeah, I would agree with everything you've said there. I think sometimes in the moment when there's the frustration as well, it's hard to imagine future benefit. Ultimately is what the support team is here for at Jane, to help you through those moments. But the more strategic pieces and thinking about, should I invest in further in software and things like we've just released AI Scribe for the note taking. And that really is, it's not about AI. It's about, can you make a great summarized note there and then with a client, with a patient, and go, actually, that might be an extra £15 a month, but that saved you from having to spend 2 hours after clinic writing up all your notes. That then is your choice then, isn't it? Do you actually go and get some time away from clinic? That could be a great idea. Or you could see an extra few patients. And I think that sort of return on investment piece is always a little tricky in what Jane does, in what any software provider does, because it feels disconnected. And I guess the encouragement I was always have is to bring it back to simple outcomes, bring it back to simple. Okay, if you divide up your time in 15 or 30 or 45-minute blocks, what is the system getting me those blocks back? And is it creating more and more of those, and crucially helping me understand where I'm spending that time? Then I think that you're onto a good system there. You're onto a good thing.
Let's talk about AI Scribe then, Tom, because I'm very excited about this. So tell everybody what this feature is, because it's within James, so it's all seamless, it's all there. Tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, that's right. So it's been built in the charting area in Jane. So it is another way to do your notes when you're with a patient, with a client. So the way it works is that it will first of all transcribe the entire conversation, and then it will actually summarize in a format that you've decided, and you can prompt it as well. You can say, look, I tend to write short notes. I like bullet points. You can use what we call the global prompt, but that's basically the master instructions in the background that say, actually, this is the way I want this. And like Jane's existing charting, you can build templates and whatever you want really in terms of the output. The crucial bit then is that transcript becomes a summarized note, which doesn't go into the record yet. So the big thing is, you as the practitioner are in control of what happens to that summary. And you can upvote it or downvote it. You say this response was good or it was wrong in these ways. So we keep learning as well. So we learn how well our models are doing. And from there, then that summary, you can make any changes you want, and then you can save it directly. We are seeing that people are saving anywhere, we conservatively claim 30% time on note taking, but anecdotally, we hear a lot more a lot higher than that, as you can imagine, because you're getting a good draft, and that's worst case. We find a lot of people add a word or two and click save. So you are done with your note as soon as that person walks out of the room, and it's done in the moment. And we find as well that the depth of note taking is improving for practitioners. And look, we're early days yet in the UK, so we're always keen to hear feedback. But this part of the product was out in North America for almost a year first, so we've had tens or possibly even hundreds of thousands of practitioners use it who very similar to the audience who will be listening to this. So it's a well-tested product as well, and we're constantly adding and improving to the model accuracy and making sure that we're always monitoring as well for those thumbs up, thumbs down from practitioners.
How is it regulated? Because people always worry about these sorts and what Jane does, I think, extremely well is anything that you do create is very well regulated. Is that the right word? It's just done properly, I think is the best way to describe it. So what reassurance can we give clinic owners here that everything is above board and that the transcripts are being saved in a certain way and we're adhering to GDPR and consent and all of these sorts of things?
Yeah, it's a multi-part question there, because obviously compliance and regulation is never straightforward. And as you say, like Jane takes it really seriously.
Yeah.
Big global company, and so the ethos of Jane anyway generally is to make sure that we fully considered the regulatory angle before anything that's built. I mentioned the time difference there between, like, obviously North America having it last summer and us bringing it in just now, and that was in large part to we're actually a regulated medical device for this part of the software. So that means that we're registered with the MHRA as a class 1 device. That is all about patient safety. So it's all about what options did the AI have to influence patient care. And because we have the human in the loop part of the practitioner reviews the summary, that means we're a class 1. That also means that we can share the link to our registration so people can go and check out what I'm saying. With the GDPR piece, we have all London-based servers for all the data. So we're not shipping transcripts over to North America, even though Jane is obviously a Canadian-founded company. That was a part of the work as well, was to make sure we have all of those loops tested and the servers were ready to go for launch day as well. So we think that's a pretty big deal in terms of that class 1 medical device. We're the first fully platform integrated, platform native class 1 medical device aimed at allied healthcare practitioners in the UK. Obviously, we know Heidi's been here a while and they've done a great job, but they are a standalone platform. We know they integrate with some other providers, but the reality is you are cut and pasting back and forward. And look, we know Heidi and a couple of others are perhaps also aimed at wider, like primary care and secondary care, but this has been built specifically for the folks listening to this. And we're very proud that we got the MHRA registration. A lot of work went into the background to get certified.
And you should be very proud, Tom. It's an amazing development for the UK product, I think, which is so. If we now know that there's this fabulous feature within Jane as well, but coming back to the time saving and the time versus money kind of scenario that clinic owners are forever fighting, what kind of features, Tom, within Jane? Obviously, the massive one you just mentioned is about reducing your note-taking time. I think what we're seeing more and more of with clinic owners who have team is that they're fighting constantly with how much admin their clinical team get. And it seems to be ever increasing. People need more. When I was a physio, we didn't get admin time. We just saw 20 patients back to back, and then you have to write all your notes at the end of the day. And my goodness, I wouldn't have been accurate that compared to what Jane would be able to do now. But this is the reality, is that clinic owners are being asked for more and more time to do their notes by team members, and they're feeling overwhelmed and exhausted and burnt out. And so they're managing the whole, how much admin time do I give them over business productivity and profitability and all of these things. So AI notes is like a no-brainer. That's instantly going to help that issue. What other features do you think really help clinic owners save time and save money ultimately?
I think the online booking is a big thing. I think that the ability for patients to manage their own portal there in terms of, and obviously get documents and things like that you may have shared with them. But I think that ability to book in online and you can enforce certain policies as well for new bookers. You can have, we want to take full payment up front, and that can be different for returning customers. And I think, again, every practice, every clinic will be different, but not dealing with that side of things as a practitioner. And you can do that very quickly in an appointment. Go, oh, should I set you again for a month's time? And you can look ahead very quickly. So there's optionality there, but it's also great if someone's in a rush. It's like you can book in online, particularly if they're a returning customer and you know they will. So I guess we as Jane try and give people a bit of choice there.
Yeah.
I think, again, it's that piece of, if you think about Jane payments and the things we offer there around payments and the sort of auto reconciliation from terminal to the online record there, all these little moments really start to add up. I think, again, it's that piece of, we acknowledge that Jane Payments wasn't available until last year. So a lot of clinics had gone with someone else, which is fair enough. And it's that switching cost again. But these small moments really add up in terms of burnout. And I think burnout is both just volume and cognitive breadth, right? For practitioners, especially new ones, I can imagine. It's one thing, oh, I've got to do my notes, but I've also got to rebook Mrs. Smith in, and I've got to remember to take her payment. And Mrs. Smith takes a while and fumbles around in her bag, and now I'm 5 minutes over, and that compounds across the day. So we can absolutely see that. And I think as a clinic owner, is figuring out, where are my biggest time relievers? And obviously the notes one we've just talked about, we're very proud of, but maybe it is that, okay, actually the online booking can work harder for me. I can set that up with reminders to ensure that we get people rebooking. And that we've got some work planned here in this area as well about being able to segment up your patient list and being able to remind them if they've not booked in for 6 weeks and things like that. It's all future development there, Katie, but hoping to be able to come back on maybe later in the year and talk more about that. How do I re-engage with my patient list so it's not pushed on to new staff members and things to remember to do that? So I think there's a lot of features, but the big bucket I would think about is online booking, note-taking, and payments. And obviously we've got some things we're really proud of there with Jane, but also some great stuff planned in future too.
Very exciting, Tom. Thank you. If you were to give our listeners your best tip when it comes to either within Jane, if they're Jane users, or perhaps they have a software and they're maybe making lots of workarounds, what would be the kind of final tip or piece of advice that you'd like to give our listeners?
Yeah, it's a great question. I know it's really hard, but I would stand back from some of the detail and go, where do I want to be in 6 months? And hold on to that and work backwards from that. Because a lot of what we see, particularly when maybe someone's stressed or a little upset, we unpick, and actually the root thing is they want to grow their marketing tomorrow. And actually this small thing has become a big thing. And we spend some time unwrapping that as a support team. But I think, I'd stick by what I said earlier. If you can really think about, okay, I want to be here and this is my top problem to solve. We don't expect you to be system experts, system designers. Jane is, a big system, very feature rich. We don't expect you to solve all of that. But what we love is when people come to us and say, I want to do these kinds of things. How might I get that?
Amazing. Tom, if our listeners are Jane users and want to reach out to your amazing team because they've just realised from listening to this that there's probably features they're not using, or they want to learn more about Scribe, where do they go for that? And then equally, if they're not Jane users, but they'd like to have a conversation about what it looks like to become a Jane user, how do they do that?
Reassuringly, it's all with the same team. So when you speak to Jane as a non-Jane customer, you speak to the same lovely support team, and that person will stay with you through your onboarding. And we quite often get people phoning up and wanting to talk to just Ben because they've spoken to Ben for years. And you know this yourself, Katie, right? The team's been here a long time and they're experts. What I'll do is I'll drop you a couple of links. One will be for that demos, and they can head over to jane.app and check things out generally. But honestly, we see so much better conversations and outcomes if people are happy just to come and talk to us. If you're an existing Jane customer, don't forget, the support is all part of what you pay already. It's unlimited support, so we stay on the line until your problem is solved. And if you want to go away and think about things, you can then book in a scheduled call as well. We know you're busy, so it's not just a reactive thing. You can just pick up the phone if you want, or you can book a Zoom call and get that scheduled time on the books too. So I'll share both of those links and folks can decide from there.
Amazing. Tom, thank you ever so much for your time and for giving us some insight into what Jane has just released, what's perhaps coming up as well in the future around reactivation of clients, and just to really get our listeners thinking about how much their time is worth and does this set up for success. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me on today, Katie.
You're welcome.
Thanks for listening to the Treat Your Business podcast. Hit subscribe now and keep joining me for bigger insights, bolder conversations to help you build a clinic and a life you love.